Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm super excited to be showing you how to make a funky minimal house in the style of Ben Rao in a similar style to his tracks like System Solitaire, Ad Astra, Expand, and Metatrack. As usual, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all that stuff from this video in the description, and if you're a patron, on my Patreon, check there because it's already available and it has been since last night. Let's get started. So, first sound we got here is the kick, which sounds like this. This is pretty simple, it's like this more punchy 909 style kick. You can see there's the waveform, got it in a simpler here. I've got this detuned a little bit because the sample originally, you can see, it hits the right note, which is G, that's the key we're in. But you can see it's not quite on the note, so this detune, we just put it down -29. And there we go, it's perfectly on the note. And then the only effect I have on there is just a bit of drum bus to beef it up, make it a bit stronger in the mix. That is it for the kick. Next sound we have here is the bass, which sounds like this. I'll play it with the kick so you can kind of hear the groove. So here are the notes for the bass. It's just playing this kind of like bouncy bass line. You can see we've got a bunch of swing on here, like all the 16th notes in here are off the grid. They're just pushed back a little bit. Pretty important for getting that more funky, sort of jazzy style. You hear it in Ben Rao's tracks and a lot of other minimal house tracks in the style as well. You can see also, like I was saying, we're in the key of G, and then we just have these sort of like notes up here where it's bouncing up to, but it's mostly focused around that G. So that's also another thing that I noticed with like these style of bass lines, is just you want to make sure that you kind of like focus around that one note, but then it bounces up to the higher notes. And that's where the groove comes, essentially. So for the sound on this one, it's made using Operator. What we have here is actually just two sine waves. It's a really simple sound. It's basically just a sine wave. If I turn off the filter, you can hear, like, it's mostly just a sine wave. And then what's happening is I have that going through a low-pass filter. And the reason for this is because if you listen, when it jumps up there, it's like all of a sudden becoming a little bit louder than the lower notes. Like if you listen, the lower notes are a little bit quieter than those high notes, which is understandable, but obviously that's not the best thing for mixing. So if you low pass it, you still get the high notes. You just don't get it like, getting way louder like that. It kind of gives the whole thing a more even feel, and it's going to sound a lot better, and it's going to be a lot easier to mix, and just be a lot smoother and more even low end in the mix. After that, I just have a bit of drum bus, just kind of fattening it up. Then we have this EQ8, and with this you can see I'm just giving it a little bit of a low boost, and then it's also cutting around 100 hertz. Pretty standard stuff there, just making room for the kick. That is it for the bass. I have the kick and the bass in a group or a bus, if you will. It just kind of helps to tie the low end together. I'll show you. Here's with no processing. And then with it. So you can hear, really crucial for getting that extra bit of like power and just thump in the kick and the bass. The first effect here is this drum bus. This is really gluing everything together. When you put multiple elements like this, especially low-end elements together, into some kind of saturation like this, it just glues them and makes them sound like one really tight, powerful low end. And that's the idea there. You can hear like it just evens them out and makes them feel like they kind of fit together better. After that, I just have this EQ8. With this, we're just doing a low-end boost as well as a low mid-range cut just to kind of cut out some mud. And then I also have this mid-range boost. I've been doing this a lot lately. If you guys have been watching my videos, you know. This is just for punch in the kick. If I turn, and a little bit in the bass line as well. But if I turn this off and then turn it on, you'll hear. So it's very subtle, but there's that little bit of like that it's kind of enhancing there. And there's a lot of punch in that frequency range. The next sound that we have here is this chord, which sounds like this. So this is just playing one chord actually just in 2 octaves. You can see it's just basically a G minor. We have, you can see like G, the ninth, and then the minor third there, and then D. So yeah, just a simple G minor chord, and then we just have D and G there. And yeah, like it's really not that complicated, but it's important to do kind of cool voicings like this, because this is what can take these not super complicated chords and make them a bit more interesting. And then the chord up here, same thing, it's just an octave up. Another thing that's making this one interesting is like the pattern and just the way it plays with the groove, because you hear in the first bar, we get like that brrr, like just kind of a slow held out chord, and then the second one, it goes an octave up, like that, where it's kind of like bouncing off the beat. So it's just a matter of like trying to keep it interesting with that. This is something I noticed with a lot of Ben Rausch tracks. It's like he'll have simple elements that he's just very good at making interesting through doing stuff like this and playing around with different rhythms with each sound and not just making it do the same thing the whole way through. But the sound on this one is made using operator. You can hear this is meant to be more of like a Rhodes, like kind of jazzy electronic piano sound. You can see what we've got here is just two sine waves, pretty simple stuff. They're detuned a little bit, and then those are going into a bandpass filter. So here's without the bandpass, and then with it, so you can hear it kind of gives it a more sampled feel. It sounds more like a chord like sampled from a record or something like that, as opposed to like very obviously being a synth. I've also got this LFO on here. This is a big part of the Rhodes sound, because what's happening is it's moving the volume of oscillator B, and yeah, I feel like without this movement, it just sounds like very stale. Like stale in the sense that like it just doesn't have a lot of movement to it, and it doesn't really come to life the way that a Rhodes sound does. But when you add this, there we go, just gives it a little bit more movement, brings the sound to life. After that, we just have a bit of chorus kind of spreading the sound out, as well as this echo, which is giving it more space and, you know, giving it the delay that you hear throughout the track. Then we just have a bit of drum bass to fatten it up, make it sound a little bit less like just a dry synth. And the last thing on there is this auto filter, just to cut out some line, because sometimes the echo and the drum bass can add a little bit of it. Just helps to clean it up and make room for the bass. And that is it for the chord stab. The next thing that we have here is the clap, which sounds like this. So you can hear this is just like a punchy sort of clap. With this one, it's just more about like the type of sound you choose, like one of these more minimal house style, like short and very cracky claps like this. After that, we have the snare. This is just like a little percussive sound. Here's what it sounds like on its own, and then in the mix. So this is just one of those things, you know, with this style, it's very percussion heavy. You can see we have quite a bit of percussion in this group here. And this is just one of those things where it's like, it's just going to play, you know, one note every bar, but it just adds a lot to the groove when you have multiple things doing that. Like, we have multiple elements in here, which are just doing little things like this. You can see, like, these hi-hats are just playing, like, one or two notes every bar. And yeah, it's a matter of like kind of, you can see this open hi-hat as well, plays very, very like subtly in the mix like that. And yeah, it's a matter of just having these things in here and like knowing how to build them up, because when you have a lot of things doing very few things in the mix, if that makes any sense, they're going to add up and it's going to make the mix sound very busy and full without sounding too busy and full, and without sounding like there isn't any space. Like there's still space in this track for you to kind of like get into. And it's because instead of just having a few elements do way too much, we have a lot of elements like this doing a few small things in the percussion. So yeah, next thing here is this open hi-hat. It's that one I was talking about a second ago. You can hear this one is again kind of doing that thing I was talking about with the chord, like mixing up the rhythms, because you can hear the first time it comes in, it plays here on the upbeat, but on the second time, it plays right on that beat. So again, it's like just kind of mixing it up and giving it something so when you hear it the next time, it's not just the same thing you heard the last time. After that, we have these hi-hats. I'll show you these two together, and then I'll show you the other ones. So these two, you honestly probably don't hear these that much, but you can hear what they're adding. It's because we have these two hi-hats just going constantly, and you can hear just those on their own. is good, but these kind of like highlight certain parts in the groove to make it a bit more funky and just a little bit more groovy. So yeah, you can see with these, we've got them swung. I've got pretty much everything swung in here that has 16 notes. Like that snare is swung. The other hi-hat is swung as well. The swing is really important. It's like I was saying with that bass line, like you really need that to get the proper groove with this type of style. Next thing that we have here is this hi-hat, which sounds like this. This is sort of like the main one that you're hearing throughout the track. This is the one that's playing on all the upbeats. You can hear if we take it out, it sounds kind of weird. So with this one, it's just about like the type of sound you choose. It's just this very big and full sounding hi-hat, while still not being too much in your face. Like it's not like a or anything like that, but it's still, it's like it hits really hard. Even though we have 3 other hi-hats underneath it, it's still very clear that this is the loudest one and this is the most powerful one. So yeah, next sound that we have here is this other hi-hat. This is the last hi-hat, I promise. Sounds like this. So this one's really quiet. I noticed this in a lot of Ben Rausch tracks and a lot of minimal house. They'll just have a little hi-hat like this kind of underneath the one I just showed you. Where it's really quiet. It's not doing a whole lot, but it's just giving you like that little bit of percussion in the background. If I turn that off, you can hear the groove isn't as fluid. So yeah, and then of course that is swung as well. And yeah, and then the last layer that we have here is this operator percussion, which sounds like this. So this is something I've heard in almost every single Ben Rausch track. What it is, I'll show you the notes. It's just playing this constant tick, 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 tick. But what's happening is it is just some white noise going into a bandpass filter. And then the way that you get this sound and kind of like dial it in a little further is the bandpass filter has an envelope on it, which is giving it a click. You can hear, here's without an envelope. And then with it, you can hear that really adds that clickiness, so it'll punch through the mix. But then we also have this LFO here on the filter, and so the LFO is just slowly moving that bandpass. So you can hear it's kind of like changing in timbre if I turn off the LFO. It just kind of sits in one place. It doesn't have that same life to it. So yeah. And then after that, I'll show you what that sounds like just coming out of the synth. It's not quite there just yet. Just outside the synth. But after that, the first thing we have here is this echo. And what this is doing is, you can see I have the left and the right ear on slightly different times. So it's giving the sound a bit of stereo width and kind of making it feel a bit bigger, but also it's helping to just give it a bit of space. Because you can hear without this, it's very dry. But this kind of just gives it a bit more character and space. And then yeah, also that stereo width is definitely being pulled out a bit by having the 2 different times on the left and right ear. That was something I noticed, like, if you don't have that, if you just have it mono, or like, yeah, if you don't like really pay attention to the details there with the stereo stuff, with this sound, it's just not going to cut through the mix. It's a very small sound. It's very subtle. So you really need to know how to mix it to make it work. And this is how you do it. After that, I have this erosion. Here's without this. And with it. So you can hear this is the last thing that kind of takes this and makes it the sound. It just takes it, and like when you have a bandpass filter with a high resonance like this is, going into an erosion, you can hear it just adds that like metallic sound to it that you wouldn't really get any other way. After that, I just have a bit of drum bus to fatten it up. This helps to make it not just sound like a synth as well. And then we have this auto filter cutting out the low end. I have all that percussion I just showed you in a group. This is, yeah, I'm just bussing, just like I was talking about above with the kick and the bass. I'll show you, here's with no effects on here. And then with everything. So, first thing here is the drum bus. It's just like I was saying before. Very helpful for just kind of evening everything out and making everything have that same hit to it and making it all, you know, fat enough and powerful enough in the mix to contend with the kick and the bass. After that, we have the CQ8. This is just cutting out some low end, doing a little bit of a high end boost as well, to give it some more clarity and kind of sharpness. You can hear the difference there. And that is it for the percussion bus. So that's it for this one, guys. I just want to show you some techniques I learned listening to a bunch of different Ben Rao tracks. I've been a fan of his for a while, and you guys have been requesting this one for a while, so I figured what better time than now. So that is it for this one, guys. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and everything I just showed you in this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's available already. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.